You're listening to the NCF&B podcast, part of the OG Podcast Network. The NCF&B podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBpod. This episode sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com, providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. And now, enjoy the show.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss, and we are on location in 82nd Street between Lexington and 3rd Avenue in New York City at the world-famous The Simone. We're sitting down with Ms. Tina Vaughn, and Eventually, and we'll be an intermittent guest on the show, Chef Chip Smith. Also, Forrest Raider Mason is sitting in on this one, so welcome, Forrest, as well.
Thank you.
Back to Tina. Tina, welcome to the podcast.
My pleasure.
We're sitting here with your special brew of coffee that you've just made and told us your little secrets about how you brew it. It also speaks to the attention to detail that you do in everything that you do.
It's an obsession. It's a lifestyle, not an obsession.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle. It's like having a farm. It's just different animals. You don't have to milk them. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So let's paint the picture a little bit right now.
Yeah.
So we're in New York, but we're speaking to a restaurateur in the Upper East Side, the Simone. But why we're a North Carolina podcast? So why are we talking to a restaurateur out here? Well, I do believe you spent some time in North Carolina. Is that correct?
Little time, 2 places, Kitty Hawk and then Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
We've heard of those places.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was the world famous as well.
Yes.
Bonne Soiree.
Yeah,
in
Bonne
Chapel
Soiree.
Hill.
We loved it there. Bonne Soiree was beautiful. I still miss that restaurant, the interiors of it, tucked in the courtyard, the atmosphere of it. It was lovely.
And that was from 06 to 11, right? Roughly.
Yeah, 06 to 11.
5 years or so.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Pretty strong run then, and a lot of people would compared that to a Manhattan style restaurant in North Carolina.
We always just, it happened in Kitty Hawk as well, where people would be surprised we were trying to do a particular style of restaurant, not in the city. Now, of course, we did it then, and we kind of did it backwards, right? Because now people go everywhere and open restaurants everywhere, and it's okay, and they do it. And it's because of podcasts, it's because of the internet, it's because of the focus on food everywhere. Now everyone can leave a big city.
You're welcome.
Do you want to play the Dwayne Johnson song now?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it is because of getting the information out and people getting more interested in having it close by in their communities and not having to always travel to get what they want. And so now there's lovely places everywhere that people don't even have to come up and see me, but I appreciate it if you will.
Yeah, come up. So I also want to preface or laud Bonne Soiree for a second. So a former guest of our show, and I'm not sure if you would know him because he kind of came up after you had already left, but Matthew Bettinger, who helps us out a lot, and he owns, along with his wife, Sea Grace in downtown Raleigh, and then just opened up a awesome cocktail bar in downtown Cary called Sidebar. But I was seeing him the other day and telling him how we're going to go up and visit you, and I said, oh, do you know Chip and Tina? He said, well, I don't know them personally, but let me tell you, when Bonne Soiree, and he just paused for a second and goes, wow, that just changed the game for me when it came to really putting food and wine together.
Wow, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Isn't that a nice compliment?
And I truly respect his palate and just his overall business acumen. So, yeah.
It's always nice to hear that.
Yeah, and so for reference as well, we flew up here yesterday on a Friday. Today is Saturday morning, and we're sitting inside your 11-table, 38-seat restaurant.
34 seats, still
34.
11 tables. The same formula in Kitty Hawk, the same formula in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
And when we first came up here to open, well, first of all, this is, of course, anyone who knows us will know already the story that we lost everything. And we were just hoping to get a job. and we couldn't get a job.
That was in between Chapel Hill and New York?
Yeah.
When you say you lost everything,
well, they
is that
decided
due
to tear the building down, and so
Right.
you don't get any of your build out back. And we had just made it through the 2008 recession, and it was just starting to get busy again, and they decided to tear our building down. So all of that build out, we pulled gas lines through the parking lot for that restaurant. We paid for that. So we sold everything, and I will say I was thinking this morning about Amy Tornquist and Scott Howell and Shannon Healy.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm thinking about
former
them,
guests of the show.
yes, and the reason I'm thinking about them is because the three of them, like, showed up and bought everything we had for us.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
They
gobbled it
showed
down.
up
Yeah.
and just purchased all of our stuff because they knew that we were, in trouble.
And you had good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we had good stuff, but it was still more that they showed up.
Right.
Yeah.
We love them.
But there's
We
a
love
community
them.
in North Carolina
That's
that
right.
really is supportive, which is
Yeah.
Really,
great.
it was amazing. Shannon Healy, I think, still uses all my vintage glassware. He has my
He probably broke
lighting.
it, to be honest. Yeah.
He has lighting on the wall that was on Bonne Soiree's wall. I mean, really.
Oh, that's so
Amy
cool.
Tornquist bought like so much kitchen equipment. Scott Howell basically walked in at the end of it, and he was just like, whatever you have left, I'm just going to take it and tell me how much. And I was like, okay. But yeah, amazing. So we basically left there. We'd probably still be there. I mean, we would still be right there in Chapel Hill in that corner had they not decided to develop for UNC, I think.
So what was the decision? Why New York? I mean, that was a pretty drastic decision.
Well, we met here. Chip and I, met here. I was up in New York since I was 17, and I got into the restaurant business as a second career after meeting Chip and seeing how he cooked, and I realized, to be honest with myself, and know that he had more talent than I had, probably for a long haul. Mine was probably more finite.
He's going to hear this later, so are
Yeah.
you sure you want to tell him?
Yeah.
He knows.
He might
I
use
say
it
it all the
against
time.
you.
Oh no.
My wife would never say these words out.
Oh no. We
Love you, baby.
we pay homage to the religion of Chip. So seriously, everybody does. I mean, he works 85 hours a week. He does all the pastry. He bakes the bread. He cooks every night on the line. He does the filleting and the butchering and he walks out at the end of the night with barely a spot on his chef coat.
We noticed that last night. That was one of the most impressive things.
Little dirty on the belly, though.
And still smiling
Yeah.
and still happy to talk to you.
Yeah, he looked fresh as a daisy, like
Fresh
he hadn't worked
as a
at all.
daisy.
Yeah, his hair was properly coiffed as
Yeah,
well.
50 covers.
Yeah.
Just
And so when you see that someone has an innate talent like that, a natural ability to produce what's their gift, their dharma, you got to just throw in the towel and know you should follow.
So you were cooking in kitchens before that?
I was not. I was cooking elsewhere. I was cooking on stages.
Oh, performer.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
How could we
I
not
totally
know that?
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have a theater background.
I have a little bit of a theater background. Yeah.
Very cool.
And some LA background, but mainly I was a Rockette.
That's right.
Oh, I didn't know.
totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
line kicking it all. Huh?
Line kicking and all.
Former Rockette turned sommelier. That's the old story. So clear.
Yeah.
So cliche, isn't it?
Jeez.
It is very cliche.
So, yeah, how did you transition from dancing and being a Rockette into food and wine?
Well, I transitioned from dancing because I had, as every dancer gets, ankle injuries, knee injuries. So I was getting to the age that I was going to have to stop dancing.
So 19.
So
Put her down.
that's pretty funny. 19. That's right. But I got again. I felt I was always a little bit lucky in some regards. I was waiting tables in a restaurant back in the day, and a commercial agent gave me his business card. Said, if you're anything in front of a camera like you are tableside, come talk to me. And so that's what started me. I wasn't set out to do anything but dancing, but then I segued into commercials and some television and a tour of a couple of shows, and I was just really lucky. I went to LA for a while. I thought LA was fun, and now LA is really fun, but it was fun.
LA is way better now that I left.
Food-wise especially.
Yeah.
Food-wise is getting its own energy. And then I came back to New York, and I was still working in the business, and Larry Forgione, who I had met years ago, when I first moved to New York, working on the outdoor cafe. I was 17 and lied about my age. I got hired by the Rockettes, but it wasn't starting until November, so I came up. I needed a job. I needed to make money. You come up with, like seriously, $500 in your pocket and a share apartment and hope for the best, which is what I did. And And I met Larry Forgio when he was the chef there. And that was years. Years go by, and I'm walking down Lexington Avenue after returning from LA. And I was in Life magazine as a Rockette, and Larry was in the same issue of Life magazine. This is years go by, as the premier regional American chef, as one of the regional, focusing on regional cuisine. And he passes me on Lexington. He turns around and he goes,
points to you.
I wish you could see the motion that Tina's doing right now.
Podcast.
Right. Oh, that's right. No visuals. See, this is why I gave up acting. And he said, don't I know you? Didn't you work for me years ago? And I said, I did, at the Outdoor Cafe. What are you doing for 2 weeks? You want to host us? I'll pay you cash. And I was like, well, I've got auditions and I'm working, but yeah, as long as I can leave when I need to. And I showed up and I hosted for 2 weeks. Then the dining room manager left, and he said, who am I going to hire to replace you? You've been with me for years. She goes, what about that girl that was here? The customers loved her. They called me and said, you want a job? I said, again, I'm acting. I have to leave. I can't show up until this time. Are you flexible? Yeah. Chip was an extern in the kitchen. I never ate a thing back then.
Right.
Can I ask you quick, though, before we get off of the Rockettes?
Yeah.
How big was the dance troupe? Like, how many women were in the Rockettes at that time?
36.
36 Rockettes. Is that the standard? That's what it
how
always
funny.
is?
Is that why I only have 34, 36 seats?
Correlation.
The number.
Yeah, 36. And it goes in various heights from center down, even though you think it's one line. It starts at 5'7.5", 5'8", and goes down to 5'5".
Oh.
And the illusion from the stage
From the
makes
reg
it look
stage,
like...
yeah.
They're all the same height?
Yeah.
You're
where
a
did you
fairly
fall in?
tall person, so you
I
were in
was
the
third
center.
from the center.
Yeah. Right. Long legs.
Long legs.
But it's not
What a
all...
stone
The
team.
Rockettes weren't just all about just kicking their legs. They did a lot of...
They did a lot of other stuff, especially now, though. They do a lot more now than back then.
Sure.
We only did the Christmas show and a couple of industrial tours.
And did you come from, was your mom a dancer? Or
No,
was
I was
dancing in
just,
your blood?
that kid who took dance and was part of a troupe and thought I wanted to be a dancer and moved to New York and gave up scholarships to college and there was a national audition promotional thing for the Radio City. They went nationwide because do you remember when they almost closed Radio City?
I don't, but maybe Matt would.
Do you remember here?
I can't pinpoint the time, but
They
I
had an
remember.
issue, and they were trying to save it, and they almost closed Radio City Music Hall. And so that was, and I was really young then. I was 16, and I was still in high school. And they did this big promotional tour in big cities and held open auditions for the Rockettes in all these big cities. And of course, thousands of dancers came from all over.
Yeah.
And the Kennedy Center in D.C. was one of their locations for an audition. So my dance teacher at the time called someone and said, just for the experience of auditioning, even the 9, 12-year-olds were allowed to go. Wait in line all day. Number on your chest. Thousands of girls. And I got hired.
Wow.
Yes, and so you would have been in Virginia at the time.
At Virginia,
so it was
Washington, Alexandria, Virginia.
so it was a hop, skip, and a jump for you to get over there.
So,
And out of 1,000 people, they picked you?
Well, I think it was because I was the right height.
Third from center.
Sure, yeah.
You had a need to
skill.
fill.
Yeah.
You got to give yourself
A
some
little
credit
skill.
there.
Yeah.
So,
So-
did anybody else make it from that audition?
No.
Wow. That's literally, what are the odds?
Yeah.
1 in 1,000.
Yeah.
So then I came to New York, and I always liked restaurants, but I didn't eat. I was a dancer, and you ate a big meal was like I had an apple as well as my salad today. It was so exciting.
I had 2 croutons.
Yes, that's true.
You're naughty.
Yes, and I met, and Chip was in the kitchen. He was so young then. He was 27, so young, and he started sending food down at the end of the night to me, and I didn't know it. It was, that was a big kitchen. American Place was 125 seats, and 125 seats. I had 20 people in the kitchen. I'm up and down the stairs because it was upstairs. The kitchen. It was this old building on 32nd Street, and he kept sending food down, and the staff would say, "This is sent to you to eat," and I was like, "I don't eat." Tell him thank you, but you guys can eat it. Right? And so by the 5th or 6th night, they were like, you have to take a bite of this food. It's remarkable. He's really good. You should taste the food.
And he was doing this as an extern?
As an extern.
Ooh.
Wow.
And I took a bite of the food. And there you go.
It was love at first bite.
Yeah.
And that was the end of your dancing career.
It really, kind of, yeah. And then I had to learn about wine because I didn't know anything about wine. As a dining room manager, I never drank. Because, as a dancer back then, even now, your body's your temple. You try to take care of it. So I never drank alcohol, never smoked, never drank. And so I started to learn about wine, and I noticed that wine was different, especially if you have virgin taste buds at the time. It changed if you took a bite of some food, and it would change the wine, or the wine would change the food, and sometimes it wasn't pleasant. And you were like, oh, that's not good. That's not the way you want your experience to be. My agent called for a callback audition one day. I was at a big wine tasting with a French portfolio, and I came to the phone, and she was like, oh, you've been asked for a callback, only for, so you've been requested by a director? I said, oh, I can't go. I'm at a wine tasting. And she was like,
Isn't that funny?
I'm going to hang up and call back and ask for Tina.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I think I'm done. But hey, thanks. It's been fun. And I had national commercials running, and my agent was like, yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding. Yeah, just like that, because Chip was so good. And I knew that I knew enough about restaurateuring, and that was the 90s, which was still pretty, Wild West with chefs up here in New York.
Yeah.
And I knew the lifestyle. I knew late hours, long days. If I did one day, if I was in the day and he was at night, we never see each other.
Yeah.
You have to make a choice about your life. Is this person important enough to want to make amends in what you do to be with them? And I realized I liked this as much as I liked dancing and auditioning and doing commercial work, and the wine and the service. It all just morphed. And everyone says like the way we do service, where everyone takes care of you. There's not a station.
Yeah.
There's not a section. Everyone takes care of you in the room.
Yeah.
And I have to say that I saw this in France, in Bordeaux, at a small little restaurant that was the daughter of the Troguereau family. Her and her husband had a restaurant that was really sweet and small, and Chip and I had taken a vacation, and we went to that restaurant. And I was sitting there at lunch, and I was watching, and everybody was in regular clothes. They were not in uniforms. Everybody was wearing just nice dress clothes. And I kept watching it, and I was like, gosh, how interesting. There's not one person, everyone's like taking care of the entire room. And this was like a 75-seat restaurant. And and you couldn't really tell which one was the owner and which one was the maitre d' and who was maybe the cat. You couldn't tell.
Right.
Everyone just came up and took care of you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I like this. Let's do this someday. Let's try to do this someday.
Well, that's our perspective. So last night we dined here.
Yeah.
And we came in, the three of us dined with Matt's mom and dad, who should have their own show.
They should.
Somebody needs to produce their own YouTube show.
We'll make the Ed and Alan podcast coming soon. But,
It's going to need video.
They need video. And so we sat at, I'm going to guess if that's table 1, then we were
6.
sitting at table, that we were at 6. Oh,
That's
got it.
table
1, 2,
6.
3, 4, 5, 6. So sit at table 6, which is in the back of the restaurant. And
What kind of Matt's table?
Yeah.
yeah.
Officially now.
Right.
Named.
And so the Simone, but to the Weiss family, the Simone is like your family restaurant. You would many times show up with your brothers, sisters, and parents.
Yeah, we've dined here, I think that was probably my 6th or 7th time.
Oh, yeah.
And we would make a regular thing about, like, with my brother and sister-in-law, my wife, my parents, and sometimes other parts of the family would come. But every time we would leave, we would make a reservation for the next time.
Right.
Because you have to make a reservation, like, 2 months to 3 months out. So
Yeah, this is not an easy place to get in.
Yeah.
Although you said you were slowing down because now maybe it's
No,
6
6
weeks.
weeks
out.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, so the end is coming.
Yeah, that's right. There's the nail in the coffin, people.
When it comes to vodka, it starts at the farm. Social House Vodka sources corn locally from a farmer who plants non-GMO corn. And because it's made from corn, it's also gluten-free. Social House Vodka comes from Kinston, North Carolina, and sources water from the ancient Black Creek Aquifer. Social House Vodka. Live socially, enjoy responsibly.
Matt, I got to ask you, had you been coming here prior to your interest in moving to North Carolina, and did you know there was a North Carolina connection with Tina?
I did know that there was a North Carolina connection, but had nothing to do with me moving. Separately.
For you, you knew the Simone as an Upper East Side Manhattan restaurant.
Well, I remember the first person who told me about it was a wine rep from Martin Scott named Pam Stein, and you had just been written up, and I think just opened
Oh,
maybe
that
2 months or something
Oh,
like
no,
that.
yeah, we got a blurb in New York Magazine.
No, New York Times.
We had just a little opening blurb. The review was in June of
So June, so maybe
8 months.
So maybe okay, so you'd been open
And
for
I
a
would
while.
not find that surprising. That's when you heard about it. It was that was the kind of nail biting winter that we thought we didn't know. Like I said from the beginning, this is all luck.
Yeah.
This is all just fate or something that we got this gift. We consider this restaurant a gift. We never take it for granted. We never care about the hard work. We never. If you would have asked me 10 years ago if we'd ever have a restaurant in New York City, I'd say, don't be ridiculous, don't be silly. What do you mean in New York? How are we ever going to have a restaurant in New York? What are you talking about? So this is amazing how this all came together. And that review was, I can't even talk about it without getting choked up and crying because...
Do it.
Because we never even saw him come. We knew the reputation the Upper East Side had in regards to restaurants. In New York, the Upper East Side is that place that has nice restaurants, have people working hard, has Eli's, who's been here how long?
Yeah.
It has its thing, but it's not, as you well know, you gentlemen know, that, Midtown over to Brooklyn, that's the hot spot, that's the hip spot. Everybody wants to be in Flatiron, everybody wants to be in Brooklyn, because that's
Chelsea,
the groovy,
Tribeca.
that's what Durham captured that energy, right?
Sure.
And Durham is doing that energy.
Yeah.
Smart people over in Durham doing that energy. And so we actually chose the Upper East Side because we just thought that we could have a quiet restaurant that would eventually gain some momentum and eventually get a nice clientele, and the word would get out, word of mouth, and we can maybe just make it. We can maybe, to even be opening a restaurant was still like a flabbergasting test.
I want to give an equivalent for a second.
Sure.
That the Upper East Side is to New York City or to Manhattan what like North Raleigh is to the Triangle.
I was
dining.
going to say the same exact thing.
Yeah.
So you're building yourself for a marathon, not for a sprint. And
Right.
these restaurants that are fantastic in the lower
They have
Manhattan area,
chefs' names behind them. They have PR. They're like 6 months out telling you they're coming.
Right.
We did none of that.
But then they're also sometimes done in 5 years because
There are places who have closed that open the same time we did.
right, and maybe it's not because they weren't successful. Many times places will just change because they're like, okay, we got to do the next new thing.
That's right.
We don't want to be that, but you opted
right.
to be classic, timeless, if you
Yeah,
will.
classic with using inspiration of regional and what's happening now, and classic that's not in the way of, stuffy or old. We're not a bistro and we're not haute cuisine.
Right.
We're that odd model in between that you find everywhere in Europe. You find our model
I was
everywhere.
about to make that connection. I
Yeah.
feel like I am in a French bistro or some. To be honest, I feel like I'm in your home right now.
Yeah.
I feel like you just pulled your furniture out and put tables in your downstairs dining room, and I'm just imagining that your beds are right up these staircases.
We
right
live on the third floor of the building.
So you do. We are in your home,
Yeah, pretty much.
right?
We live on
Well,
the
it
third
feels
floor.
like you're in someone's
Yeah.
house, especially
if
the
they had
service.
servants, though.
Well-
like, not servants, but
How about if they had children
Yes.
that were serving us,
Yeah.
and we're really into the food.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
because even your maitre d' when we first walked in, who was smiling and beautiful and charming, then later came and took our order.
That's right.
And then also,
That must be Miss Adley.
and she gave like great insight as to what we should order, and then it was Jose, I believe.
Jose.
Yeah.
Came
Who's been
over,
with me now 4 years.
and Jose came, dressed smart in a nice suit, with the tie, and just looked at us and was like, "Gentlemen, we're doing cocktails." And we just said, "Yes, we are," and we want mezcal. And he's like, "Okay," and he goes, "How about we mix it up a little bit?" I'm like, "Sure." And he walked away, went upstairs,
right.
probably jumped on your bed a little bit, and then came back down.
And with these beautiful
and showed
cocktails.
up 3 individually made, all
Delicious
separate
cocktails.
with mezcal as
Yeah.
the root.
Yeah.
And those were amazing. And then then the Weisses came in, Ed and Ellen, and they had champagne. And then we were off to the races. And one of the things that I noticed that it felt so charming. And unofficial researcher of the podcast, Andrea Weigel. I say unofficial as a wink because Andrea did an article about Bonne Soiree closing and then how you took your talents to the Upper East Side, to steal a LeBron James reference. She had mentioned I'd never had a chance to eat at Bonne Soiree. I missed out, but I came to the Simone and ate here to check it out. And she noticed what I noticed as well, having read the article this morning and not before the dinner, was that your handwritten menu was very charming and personal. Like
Yeah.
that's your writing, and I believe you just photocopy it or so. And
Yeah,
and
I
then
make
put it in
I make a
menus.
master and photocopy it because I used to handwrite them with the ink. When water hits it runs, so ruins the menu, whereas it doesn't with a copy.
Can I
And,
ask a millennial over here real quick?
That is a
millennial
personal restaurant.
Forrest, you're a millennial, aren't you?
I think technically, yeah.
Do you even, as a younger person, did it take you a beat to understand how to read cursive on a menu?
Well, I mean, I'm old enough where they still taught cursive in the 3rd grade. Like,
but we don't see it very often,
cursive,
right?
Oregon Trail, and then now it's the internet. But no, I will admit there were some dishes I didn't order just because I couldn't read it.
I just don't know. Oh, filet mignon. Yes, I know what that is. I'll have
Oh,
that.
honey, I would have read the menu.
I'm
too,
just
you know.
teasing.
I have read the menu to people.
This segment is brought to you by the Triangle Wine Company. Visit Triangle Wine Company stores in Morrisville, Cary, and Southern Pines, North Carolina. Or order your wine and beer online at trianglewineco.com. And be sure to use our promo code NCFB to receive 10% off your purchases. Triangle Wine Company.
I do have to share this moment too. Forrest and I, all day we've been traveling. We woke up at 4 a.m. We got on a plane. Well, Matt, Forrest, and I so we had a long day, and we did this big video shoot at a hospital. It was just an arduously long day, and so we sit down at close to 9 p.m. for our dinner. And I look at Forrest. I'm like, man, I think for starters, I'm just gonna get the Caesar salad. My body is craving greens. He's like, yeah, it sounds like a good idea too. And then I kind of reflect on the menu, and I look back at him and I go, what the fuck am I thinking? I'm not going to come to this restaurant and order a Caesar. No disrespect to Chip. I mean, he put it on the menu, so I imagine it's a phenomenal Caesar, but a Caesar nonetheless. I said, if I'm coming to this restaurant, I want to be entertained. So yeah, instead I opted for the sweetbreads, which I think is probably about as exact opposite direction as you can go.
Totally.
I think I did well with the order.
I will say that the Caesar salad has a life of its own, and we've been doing that Caesar since the Outer Banks restaurant.
Wow.
And I will tell you that people come from the Carolinas, they have to have, even if it's a small Caesar, and because of what I pair with it too. It's my first great pairing, and still my most interesting one, and that's Gewürztraminer.
Oh yeah.
And
I can see that.
and not sweet Gewürztraminer.
Yeah.
Table level drinkable bottle of
Alsatian
Gewürztraminer. Alsace, all Germany.
Okay.
But German has to be dry.
Right.
Mainly Alsatian. But yeah, it's a remarkable blows your mind. To this day, even my staff, when they have a bite of the Caesar, you have to come out here. Sorry, that was the chef again.
Yeah, Chip is walking by. We'll get him on the microphone.
In true form, he's kind of doing what
Yes,
you did for
that's
dinner.
right.
Yeah,
We're entertained by Tina. Right now,
That's
our
right.
listeners are being entertained by Tina's stories.
This is actually my life story. I entertain you while you wait for Chip to come.
Yeah. So I want to give some perspective because people that haven't dined or haven't been at the Simone. So that is the thing. Handwritten menus. If you call during the day, you'll most likely get an outgoing message from Tina saying, "Hey, I'm at the farmer's market finding out what's good today. So leave a message and I'll get back to you." She will get back to you. Handwritten reservations, and then. The thing is, if you come to the Simone, and what I told you guys last night, I was like, you guys, you don't order wine here. You just tell Tina, I'll take the Tina pairings, and you have a magical experience.
And it's so going back to what Andrea said. I don't know if you read her article. It's a short article. It's like 750 words or so. And she said the same thing. She goes, if you're there, you do what you're supposed to do, and just let Tina take over and pair the wines. And to that same point, your dad and I were talking about it this morning about the wine pairings. Your dad loves wine. He understands and appreciates good wine. And what we loved was there was no pretense to the wine selections in that it's really easy to pair Grand Cru with something. It's really easy to give,
First
growth Bordeaux.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it's really easy to give you like a Porsche when you say, hey, let's get a nice car. Right. But it's not easy to find a diamond in the rough that's a good value. And that's what I think, that's where a great somm comes in, a great understander of the cuisine and food and balance. And that's what you brought. The wines that you brought weren't necessarily, these weren't inexpensive wines, but they weren't garish, overbode, wines. These were wines that were
exceptionally curated.
exceptionally curated and accessible, right? Like,
well, I don't know about accessible. You go to the ends of the earth to find them, so to speak. But
yeah, some of them are, I think, accessible. And of course, we were talking last evening about how dynamic the wine industry was, even when we were in North Carolina. The people that were smaller importers and piggybacking wines in. That when I first came to New York and was putting together my list, and I was looking for particular things, I told you I would be like, I'm looking for this, and a vendor up here in New York would be like, I'm not sure I can find that.
How do you know that wine?
And I'm like, I got that in North Carolina. I can't get it here in New York. I can get anything in New York. So, the wine, we because I was such a novice and uneducated, when I started learning about wine, I treated it like a food group. Because I was not a trained sommelier, and I didn't have time for a sommelier. And again, back then, 23 years ago,
you didn't have
jumping on the boat of becoming a sommelier was not like the de rigueur. People weren't doing it every day like now.
It was not like the what? The de rigueur.
Regular. It wasn't regular.
De rigueur.
I'm sorry, de rigueur.
Okay, de rigueur.
Yeah, that's now in Matt's vernacular.
De rigueur.
You have to hear Matt say de rigueur.
That's right.
Oh, you don't know what that means? De rigueur.
All right. That's definitely coming up at least 3 more times.
Oh, I love it.
3? The over-under is 8.
All right.
And so I taught myself wine in regards to how it would be as part of your food pyramid.
Yes.
How it goes. And it's not the protein, of course. It's not the fish or the meat. It is not that you pair. It is the sauce and the vegetables and the herbs and the spice that affects wine.
Right.
Yes.
And so
that is such an important thing to say.
It
People
really-
always ask, is it red wine with meat?
Yeah.
Is it
Not
white wine with
necessarily.
fish? No.
Yeah.
How are you preparing that dish?
Exactly. And so I would. Now it's been a while, and now I kind of know how Chip prepares certain things, so I might not have to retaste something. But also, winemaking has changed and changes every day. And so sometimes you might think you know a Nebbiolo, and you order a Nebbiolo, or you might think that a Beaujolais, a Cru Beaujolais, is going to taste this way. Not so much anymore.
No.
You really have to keep tasting wine all the time to keep your palate understanding what's happening as well.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started doing it. And it was meant, I would say probably it was meant at first to mask my own ignorance about the knowledge of wine. How I learned about wine was to mask the fact I didn't know anything about wine. Right? That's not a lie.
Take it till you make it.
Yeah, and so, I didn't know about years and barrels and land and I didn't know any of that.
Just knew how
stuff.
it tasted.
Just knew how it tasted.
Yeah.
And so that's how I came from it. And there were moments, and there's moments even now in here when people come in with big wines or who are big wine people, and they might not like the way I talk about wine, and they might not like the way I do it because it's not very.
Well, those guys are dicks.
It's not. It's not very
100%.
polished. Or
But you can talk to, in a parallel, a phenomenal musician that just has perfect pitch and understands how to play piano but can't read music. In the end result, does the music sound great?
Yes, exactly.
Does that wine taste good? Do you really need to know how great the 61 vintage was?
Right.
Or, we were debating back before my birth year and your birth year, Matt, 78 to 77, the differences on the Armagnacs that we were drinking. That's cool and it's geeky, but it means nothing in the end as far as just, does this taste great?
Yes.
Oh, totally.
And so that's how we would come about it, and I try to teach my staff the same way. All of my staff tries to learn the way I do wine when they come work for me, and some really capture it very easily and have natural gifts. One such young lady, you remember, who worked for me, Shruti.
Yes.
Shruti, who did the luncheon, was here for the luncheon, and she has a natural palate. And others have the more trained palate, and they like to go about it a different way, and that's fine as well. But it's kind of like if you release yourself to it, if you let yourself not be intimidated by it, it does two things. It allows you to learn more about the wine and food together, but it also allows you to let the guests know without pretension about wine and food together.
Yeah,
And that to me is the whole thing. Because here, North Carolina too, I've had guests that I consider guests for a lifetime.
Right.
I have people I miss and I think about now from North Carolina all the time. I think about them all the time. I think about what they ate and what they drank and where they sat. I can remember
Do you remember that Ed
conversations.
Weiss eats the rabbit and that
That's
he wasn't
right.
sitting in his normal chair?
He wasn't sitting in his normal seat.
Yeah.
Impressive memory,
So when it comes to helping a guest choose wine, despite their level, I said once years ago to someone else who asked me, I said, even even a CEO of a huge international company likes a bargain on the table. He doesn't have to spend $300 to $500 a bottle, especially coming to this restaurant, because when they come here, it is personal. They're bringing friends. They're bringing family. They're bringing their wives and their husbands, and they're bringing. It's here. It's dinner. It's not a big client, the kind that you're trying to impress in a certain way. It's a client that you love, that you've had for years. You're bringing them to dinner at your favorite place, and so the wine doesn't have to be. They have those wines in their cellars. They know wine. What they're fascinated with is that I find a wine that tastes like 150 and it's $59.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they go, I'm sorry, where did you get that? And I'm like, isn't that delicious?
Well, and the true beauty is, like, going back to the feeling like we're in your home, is that, to be honest, traveling out here and knowing that, Matt, your family and you come to this place, I felt like we were just going to your friend's house.
Yeah.
And that you were just eating. Now, granted, we normally don't shell out a bunch of money at the end to your friend's house, but
that's true.
But this is a business. We got to keep it open.
But even so, relatively, I mean, it's a veritable bargain to get that type of food
Let's say
and
this.
wine.
True.
We had lunch at Gramercy Tavern, the three of us.
Yeah.
And that was one course with shared bottle of Bandol. And I think our lunch was half of what
our dinner was.
Extravagant multi-course paired wine dinner for dinner.
Desserts and everything.
So.
And I will say that's another thing that we still, despite the fact we're in New York, we always are really conscious of that. Some people maybe aren't conscious of it because they think, sometimes there's this perception that because you're in New York City and you're in a certain neighborhood, you can charge whatever you want. It's interesting there again, they don't come. If they think
you
that
can do whatever you want.
You can do whatever you want. But we're also really conscious of the fact that the people that come see us, they come often. They come. We have standing reservations. We have every third Thursday of every month, every Wednesday at 6 o'clock. We have people who have their tables, and that's a dollar point I want to keep.
Yep.
And it's not. I'm not saying we're inexpensive. I'm not $65 a person, but we really are, with wine and tip, $115 a person.
Right, and now,
that's crazy.
So you hear $115 a head per person. That sounds expensive, but it's relative to New York standards. I mean, rent for your apartment is double, triple, maybe quadruple sometimes what mortgages are in North Carolina. So if you were to take the Simone and put it right next door to where Crawford and Son is in Oakwood. I would say the price point would be more like $65 to $75, just given the rent and given the cost of food and wine and all that down there.
Well, ironically, in North Carolina, I can say this: it's food's more expensive in North Carolina than New York.
Is that right?
My food cost was higher.
Huh. But
it
your
was
rent
consistently
here
higher. It's here. The only thing is rent.
Right.
All my other costs. It's a fascinating thing to see because with my handwritten reservations and my hand phone and my analogness. I also do the numbers every week by hand. Every week.
Right.
I do all my costing by hand every week. I'm the geek about that. I become like a freak about numbers. But it's fascinating to have found out that when I do the ratio of all my numbers, my food cost dropped here in New York.
Interesting.
Cost per everything is less, and that has to do, I think, with sheer demand and volume.
Exactly.
Don't you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That
like you have more vendors, more availability.
A dynamic food community in Charleston, South Carolina, in the Triangle. Although you have these dynamic food communities, it's still this.
Yeah, it's
right?
six or seven people,
pocket,
then 100.
And a big state. New York City, you have all these restaurants who are demanding a quality of product. So it keeps the price modest, I think, more modest.
This segment is brought to you by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design.
Now, welcome to the show.
There we go.
All right, we finally got Chef Chip to sit down with us. How you doing?
Great. Wow.
How you doing? Did you just say that?
Welcome to New York.
Well, we haven't skipped a beat or had one lull in the conversation, but
I'm sure you haven't.
Yeah.
You know how much I hate to talk.
Can I start with there's one thing, because I've made reference to it a few times now, the article that Andrea had, but she had a quote from you, so I think this would be kind of interesting to start from here. When the couple, the two of you, own Bonne Soiree, Chef Smith said, "We realized fairly quickly that we had the classic Upper East Side restaurant, only it was in Chapel Hill." So my question is, what is it to you, what, by your definition, is a classic Upper East Side restaurant? Put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Let's
So
do it by comparison.
well, yeah, but I think the clientele that we just found, oddly enough, in Chapel Hill, a lot of our clientele were from the Upper East Side
Of New York, had retired there.
Had retired there.
And moved down. Oh, okay.
Yes, and
They didn't make it all the way to Florida like everybody else?
We call them halfbacks.
Yeah.
Halfbacks, that's right.
That's funny. So.
Halfway back to...
Yeah.
They moved down to Florida, man.
So we and before that, when I met Tina, she had an apartment up here on the Upper East Side, and so we live up here on the Upper East Side as well.
Rent control,
Yeah, rent control.
which is a beautiful thing about the Upper East Side.
$410 a month.
Oh my
For like a
gosh!
3-bedroom.
That's crazy.
No, it
In
was a
19,
shoebox.
yeah, it was a shoebox, but still,
But still, yeah.
I was so lucky.
So, but we the reason I think that is because the Upper East Side is different than what most people think of New York is. It's much more. I mean, we have all neighborhoods here, but it's quieter. Most of the people are a little older.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think east of 3rd Avenue, they're older.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
this little pocket
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, or east of 2nd,
Well,
maybe.
I think the way
Yeah.
to say it is it's established.
It's established.
More than older, because
Yeah. Yeah.
even the young people who grew up with their families on the Upper East Side, they might have moved down to Brooklyn and the Flatiron. It's a very interesting thing to see. They bring their families back up.
Yeah.
And the primary reason is schools,
Yes.
education.
Schools and relatively to the rest of
Very
Manhattan,
affordable.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
affordable.
Are most of the buildings here residents, though, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Right.
as opposed to
Very residential. Yeah.
downtown, there's a lot
But
of
it's like,
commercial
it's
buildings.
an odd thing. It's considered a very expensive zip code in the world, right?
Yeah.
But your affordability of apartments is better up here than anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In New York.
Yeah, Forrest, you lived like 2 blocks away from here.
Yeah,
roughly.
because Brooklyn was too expensive when
Yeah.
I first moved here.
That's right.
I was like, I'd like to live in Williamsburg. They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, right. How about Manhattan? I was like, what?
Yeah. It's
reverse.
true. It's the reverse, yeah.
Well, and Max, you've seen it. Like, even though our apartment was somewhat small, we had a patio, a whole garden.
Right, you had space.
A garden apartment, which
Yeah.
was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had a 2-story apartment when I was 22.
And I think that it's.
I felt like it had a sense of place.
a sense of place. The Upper East Side is established and not very trendy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not hip and cool. We think it kind of is, but it's not really. You know what I mean? And
It seems more timeless, as we said
Yeah.
earlier.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's timeless.
Yes.
Like this restaurant in this neighborhood, everything about this area will be probably the same way in 50 years.
Yes.
With
To a certain
some
degree, yeah.
change.
Yeah.
There'll be flying cars, of course. but-
Yes. Right, and so and that's what Tina and I have always done. You know what we do. I'm very proud of what we do, but I certainly don't think it's trend setting or cutting edge or anything like that.
It's just delicious.
And well, thank you, but it's it's just it is what it is, and I think there's a classic sensibility to it.
Can I say that you're just such a chef right now? Because we are all drinking coffee out of our porcelain glasses, and you came in with a plastic quart container, and you're drinking your water out of that. I mean, can you be any more chef-like right now?
I'm not allowed to touch the glass.
Is that right? Yeah, so as a partnership between the two of you running the place, as many of we've noticed when we talk to couples that run places, there's a very kind of firm line down the middle. One runs the back, one runs the front, and never two shall pass. Or they collaborate, but kind of that's your responsibility and your jurisdiction. Is
Right.
that's the understanding between you two?
Yeah. Well, that line gets defined very early on. It's not very defined because
You don't know what you have.
We both think we know what we're talking about on both sides of the fence, and then you've come in to realize that one of you knows more about this side and one of you knows more about that side. And well, I went to culinary school. I know about wine. I know about running the front of the house. So I think, right? And so when Tina and I first started doing this, I would always try to.
You gave your opinions.
I gave my opinion, and
She loved
it's just
that.
like any marriage. you learn quickly where your opinion's not really needed.
Right. I watched Matt's dad this morning try to make coffee and like literally had a panic attack, not knowing where to put the water. He's like, "Well, are we going to make coffee or what? Ellen, where do you put the water?" And she had to show and like this
Sidebar, speaking of my dad, as he's been coming up, he challenged your egg making
That's
skills
right.
last night, and I do have a video that I'll show you offline later.
Today?
He made the over easy eggs.
Oh, it
he
was
did the
great.
flip and everything.
Yeah. But the very first thing he said as he walked to his beautiful Viking range was, "How do you turn this thing on?"
Well, that was a joke, but
The kitchen was still going though. It's
Oh
like
my
listen.
goodness.
Ellen, where are the eggs? Where do you think the eggs are?
That is not hyperbole. That is exactly how it
Yeah,
was.
it's direct quotes.
Anyway, where were we? In
So,
this?
let me ask. So, now that we have both of you here together, when was the last time you were in North Carolina?
It's been a long time.
Been a long time.
Yeah.
6 years.
Yeah.
Just like visiting wise, the last
5
time
years.
you went back.
5 years.
5.
Well,
yeah, it was right
Yeah,
before
you
we
went
opened.
down. You went down when we were in construction. You went down to bring up the last load of stuff from the beach
Button up
house.
the beach. Yeah.
That's right.
So you were essentially gone about a year before I arrived. I moved here at the end of 2013.
Yeah, we
Moved
we
to
left,
Raleigh.
Yeah, we moved up first and then went back. But yeah, it's 2012.
Nice.
Exactly.
Well, Matt and I, we wrote an article that's going to come out for Raleigh Magazine, which probably didn't even exist. I don't think Raleigh Magazine existed back then. It's only been in publication for maybe 3 years. But we wrote an article about our experience at the James Beard Awards, and one of the things that, of which we were just at two weeks ago, and one of the things I mentioned was that Raleigh has just, because we were focusing on Raleigh for Raleigh Magazine,
Right.
but really the whole Triangle's culinary scene has grown exceedingly fast in the last 5 years. From the time I touched down and saw what was available as to now, it has just completely blossomed, and it's remarkable to see how a town has really embraced its understanding of the culinary world. So we missed you. You need to come back, or you need to open up a place out there to be a part of that growth.
We do have the two guests you met at Jay Betsky's.
yeah.
Dan and Rob,
Yeah.
who we adore beyond reason, who come up multiple times a year and eat here 2 nights in a row.
They bring
come up,
barbecue and Duke's
and they bring Duke's mayonnaise
nice.
and Mr.
Betsky's.
and Betsky's pretzels. They
Yeah.
bring that for me, and they every time they leave, they say, "When are you coming home?"
Yeah.
So you're not.
Well,
This is your home.
This is
Probably right.
This is something that I wanted to get into with you guys because first of all, I knew the answer that you probably hadn't been back to North Carolina because I know that you shut down for 2 weeks in like September or something like that, or the end of the summer.
In the summer, we shut down for 6 days.
For 6 days, and typically you guys will travel during that time, right?
We have not been able to yet because the finances of the baby is constantly needing to be fed.
Right.
And so smart business is that you can't eat from your place if the baby's hungry. So we have stayed. We haven't been able to travel. And I've become slightly obsessed about leaving the restaurant unattended.
That's kind of almost more.
That's more so. Like I have to pay. I'm going to have to pay someone to check on the restaurant. I'm going to have to give someone a key, and I'll pay you money if you will go check on the restaurant for me every day and call me and say everything's fine, even though it's empty.
It's a perfect analogy, though, because like if we were traveling out of town, when we went to Chicago, we had our nanny watch the girls for 2-3 nights in a row. That was a big deal for us, like literally giving our children away to someone that's a friend of ours and close to ours, and she's like family, but still doing that. It's like, oh my gosh. So this is your baby.
This is the empty baby. It's an empty little room, but it's like I worry. I don't know what's going to happen. What am I thinking? I don't know what's going to happen. But like,
and in the end, nothing
but
bad
I think
would
the
happen.
worst.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do. I do. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, and so we keep saying we're going to go on a trip.
Yeah, small
But
trip.
this year we just got kittens, and so we're not leaving
Yes.
those guys.
We had a cat
It's
that
awful.
was left here at the. I will tell you that the most extraordinary thing I think that puts spirit in the restaurant is that the former owner Timer,
and Chip is gone.
and Chip is gone again. The former owner left the cat. Like, not only did he leave. It was a really big mess. Anyway, he left a cat, and we were like, "There's a cat, a full-grown cat in the restaurant." And you were like, what do we do with this cat? And so then, of course, we kept the cat. And I swear he put like this extraordinary spirit into the first couple of years of our opening. And he was amazing. He was a Russian blue. And
please tell me that the cat's name was Simone.
Yeah,
it was Sasha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Right.
But it was a wonderful thing. And so then we had our own cat we brought from North Carolina. And they both died. They were older. They both died within a year of each other. And then I was like, okay, no animals, heartbreaking, can't do it, too busy anyway, right? So a couple months ago, my wonderful expediter food runner, Alfonso, who I call the pet rescue of queens, apparently, who's this wonderful man, I was just having a conversation saying, I think I'm finally ready to maybe look for a kitten. I'm finally, my heart is like mended. And he goes, what color kitten you want, Miss Tina? Like a truffle dealer.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, gray or black and white, like we had.
He opens his trench coat.
Basically, that's right.
I have these two, brother and sister, gray, black and white. I bring them Sunday. What time? And we went, noon.
And
I know this
And
one
now we
goes
have
on Queens.
tiny terrorists in my apartment ripping everything apart.
Yeah.
But no mice.
But no mice.
Hanging from a speaker.
Hanging from speakers.
Oh, gosh.
Figuring out how to get on top of the refrigerator. Yeah.
Awesome.
So now we won't travel this
So
year
now you
because
won't
we have
travel.
them. But also winter. When we were on the Outer Banks, the slow time was, of course, after Christmas. Then January, February, March, a lot of restaurants closed for the whole season, but there are bigger restaurants who made a lot of money. But Chip and I would close for 5 weeks. And even though it was tough, and every 2 years we would travel to France for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And we would have a center point, and we'd get a house, which you can rent a house in the winter, not very much money.
Yeah.
And then you could go out from there and eat and visit and go to the markets and cook and rest, and it was wonderful. And so we got so used to traveling in the winter that's when I like to travel, too, not the summer. It's an interesting thing. And so I would very, very, very much in the 6th year of the business, because we are like motoring along on paying debt off and keeping everything even. We broke even in our first year, and we're very conscious of like making it work as a business, not just as a love affair. Because we have a love affair with each other, and with food and wine, and with my guest.
Yeah.
Like it's a very incestuous relationship. This restaurant, personal and incestuous. And I would like to go in January. I'd like to actually go for 10 days.
This year?
No.
Oh,
2020.
2020.
No, maybe next January. Oh, woo!
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. Yeah, it's on record. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. And for those of our listeners who don't know or might not have been here, you guys literally, this is your baby. This is your heart and soul. Chip, you're here at 8:15 in the morning baking the bread for
Making
dinner
the
service.
desserts, yeah.
As we talked about, Tina, you're here doing the books and taking the reservations, all by hand. You love this place. It is clearly your passion and what you, at least for me, a sincere and genuine love. It's not like, you go walk home and you're like, fuck, I have to do it again.
Exactly.
Like, you genuinely love it, which it needs to be experienced. So my question goes to a business question. As a restaurateur owner, you can't replicate this.
No.
Like, Chip, you could teach somebody, and
But it's not
somebody
the
can
same.
learn one, but you would never have
This is
the same
definitely a
experience.
dying model.
No.
This is definitely not a model. And everything has changed so much in the culinary world, and there's been so many new avenues of people to explore what they can do. The branding aspect of something that can be taught to be repeated and still be very good and still make people happy, that's become a very big model.
Sure.
Because chefs don't want to work 85 hours a week. They don't want to have enough to pay their bills and only 1 week off a year and 1 day off a week, and they just don't want to do. A lot of them don't want to. And there's some that still want to do it.
Yeah.
But Chip and I a few years ago realized that we had to change the way we thought about how we worked, or we would always be exhausted. And that is that you have to look at it's a more of a lifestyle than it is a job.
Right.
If you thought it was a job, you're right. You would never be happy leaving every day.
Well, and that's the connection going back to kind of this European feel
That's
or
exactly
so.
right.
I think at an economic level, and it's something I experienced when I was in Spain. My wife and I were having bocadillos in Cadiz, right? Cadiz. But we had to walk a block up from the ocean, from the coast, to get these bocadillos, these little sandwiches. But right on the water, there was a guy with Iberico ham, and he just had this amazing jamon and like baguettes But he essentially wasn't making a bocadillo. You could buy the bread and you could buy the meat. And I say to my wife, I'm like, if this guy just made these and turned them into bocadillos, we wouldn't have to walk have to walk a block
That's
away.
right.
He's got the coastline thing. He overheard me, and he just looked at me with a sense of pride and also disgust of me being a complete American. He's like, I don't do that because he does that. And he points to the restaurant that was making that. He goes, this is what I do. And I said, oh, well, I mean no disrespect. I just was saying, for convenience sake, for anyone at the beach, they could just walk in and get this. He's like,
it's not
but
about
that's the problem. Americans think that it has to all be
convenient
here, and then there's the next level, and then the next level, and then the next, and then, can you make 5 or 6 of this version of a restaurant? As opposed to just saying, this is what I do. I am happy with my life. My quality of life is great. As long as I can pay my bills, maybe go to the Outer Banks in 2019 for a week, come back and enjoy what I have. This is my life, and call it a day at the end.
It's being happy. It's exactly right. Being happy with your day, and the joy of your day. And it's not always joyous. It's not always easy. The amount of things that can go wrong in a single week is always like extraordinary, or in a single day. Like the amount of things that you go, oh my goodness, you've got to be kidding me. You walk in and then the pizza preplo boy is down. Then you go downstairs and the basement is flooding. Then the line cook calls out because they're tired and they don't feel like working. Then,
bro, I got so much anxiety.
It's a job. That's right. Stress, man. Then you have a waiter who pulls off the $250 bottle for when the person pointed to the $65 bottle, and she opens it and pours it. And you think to yourself at the end of the day, and then you have a customer who comes, and for whatever reason they've had a bad day, and then they're not happy to see you, and at the end of the day you're like, man on, but then you have a glass of wine, and then you sit and you laugh and you fold napkins and you close up and turn the lights out and you go home, and you know what, it's still fantastic. And you come back the next morning and we get to put a key in the door, and it's like, how can this sweet little place be ours? It's amazing to me.
See, what you guys have found is fulfillment.
Yes.
Like, that's the definition of it. Because you don't, maybe you do, but it seems this completes you and fulfills you, and you don't necessarily want for other things.
No, not a lot. Yeah. Chip does. I will say we're a perfect balance. I want for really nothing.
Yeah.
Except for like, oh my goodness, I tasted a glass of wine today that's like heartbreaking, but I can't get it. Or I get Jonesing for a certain food, mozzarella from Casa della Mozzarella up in the Bronx. I like obsess about that mozzarella, which is not easy for me to get my hands on.
We're gonna have to go get it.
But Chip, drum kit, motorcycle,
But you want
camera, watch. Anyone who knows Chip, I can say he's clothes obsessed.
Oh. He is
shoe obsessed.
Together,
right? Doesn't he look good? Even the chef. Oh no! Oh, come on! Don't make me take him upstairs.
No.
Okay.
We kidded, but after a long day of work last night, at the very end, you came out of the kitchen looking like good. Fresh as a daisy. Hair is perfectly coiffed. We made fun of the one speck of stain on your chef coat.
Yeah.
Kidded around to say, "Oh, did you just put that chef coat on before you walked out of the dining room?"
Yeah.
But truth be told, we've been in that same thing. Right.
No,
all day
it's
long.
true. He wants for lots of toys, and I want for I don't really care. So it works out as a good balance.
Yeah, but I'm getting better about it because I'm getting those things.
Yes, you are getting them.
Chef, speaking about want, if you could cook a completely different style of food that you do, what would that be?
Oh dear.
And then second part of that is there ever been a dish that you really wanted to make here but that just didn't work?
Keeps wanting to do pork.
Yeah, pork.
Of course,
with the last
Yeah.
one because that's the easiest. I have a love pork.
Yeah,
Because of where I'm from,
North Carolina,
and my French background as well. They're very similar, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been able to do a couple of things that are porkish. And some that are similar to like the trotter dish that we do.
Hands down, one of the most popular dishes, and even in Chapel Hill, he did his take on trotter. So what he does though is he doesn't stuff it back in the foot. He takes the pork and braises it and pulls it off the bone and tosses it with basically barbecue spices and a little Dijon mustard. and then he chops up the ear or the crispy ear or the skin, and he rolls it all together, and he puts it on sauce grabiche and tops it with this pickly, vinegary, shredded little carrots and radishes. So it's basically the French meets Carolina in a barbecue.
Nice.
Yeah.
And in Chapel Hill, when he started that dish, other chefs who were working or didn't usually came by to stand at my little bar side to try that dish because they heard about it. Mm-hmm. And here in New York, when he does that, people are like obsessed. They get obsessed with that dish.
Wow. But it's been, so I've been wanting to take that further. And our problem is, it's kind of self-imposed, I think, sometimes. But, for us to serve a pork chop, that doesn't belong.
Right.
Yeah. And so my whole thing is trying to make it small so that it seems
elegant.
I don't want to say petite, but refined and whatnot. And so I've always toyed with the idea, and I always talk myself out of it, or Tina talks me out of it. You know what I mean? And so it always gets put on the back burner. But I think we have found a distributor here who
does baby chops.
It's not a suckling pig, but it's a younger pig, and so we can do a smaller version of that, and it'll work out really well for us. And so that's probably down the pike. Mm-hmm. But
maybe
that's one of the
doing it as a duet with the trotter.
Right, it'll be like a duet with the trotter, absolutely. And I mean, we've always done charcuterie, sausages, and most of our terrines have pork in them anyway. But as far as a pork entree, we haven't. That's been like our kind of nemesis. Not nemesis, but you know what I mean?
Do you think that's also because you're on the Upper East Side and people have, there's obviously a large Jewish influence,
well,
so maybe there's a connotation?
We actually do think about that as well. But we actually have one guest who we're due to do that for Mr. Dunning, and who says, please, will you make me a pork chop for dinner if I'm special requested?
Right.
Yeah.
He did it for his birthday once.
Right.
And
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
What'd you pair with it, Tina?
I like white or red with pork, depending on how Chip works with it. Mm-hmm. And red, I like a pasta to grain, which I think is delicious with pork. I could go easy and say your Maury sent to me from last night, right? I could go easy there. And the Vattalina Nebbiolo, which is hard for me to get, and I love Nebbiolo from Vattalina with pork. And
is this for Elijah?
No, that's for my foot.
Oh.
That's for the classic dance injury girl.
Yeah.
So when it rains.
We're talking about an extra chair
that's
just
right.
pulled up.
That's for the Rockette. For white, Pinot Gris from Alsace, Châteauneuf-du-Pape Blanc when I'm feeling decadent, the Simone Blanc 2009 vintage, heavens, and Spanish white Riojas that has Doña Blanca in it.
That's that Rioja, that white Rioja you paired for me
the
with
Contino.
the sweetbreads.
Old Vine Viola.
Unbelievable.
Old Vine Viola. Spicy, decadent.
Matt made an observation last night that, I mean, you don't know me from anybody, and maybe you know Matt's palate a little bit because he's dined here, but all of the wines that you selected for us weren't just wines that made sense for the food, but it also would be the wine that I would have probably pulled off the shelf myself because of my personal likes about, like the Châteauneuf-du-Pape, that speaks to me. I love it, and I've mentioned to Matt so many times, that's what I like drinking. And that white Rioja, the same way. These are wines that I personally seek, and you just made that happen for me. It's like, how did she know?
Yeah.
But yeah, the Moët Saint-Denis Burgundy for Matt, that's something that he speaks of many times. That's his wheelhouse. That's what he loves, and you just put it right there in front of us, and that is just shows the true art of understanding your guests, their tastes, their likes, and what Chip's putting out in the kitchen and how it's going to make sense. I mean, it is a beautiful thing. I will say, and I love this. Just going back to North Carolina, and as Matt and I were having this conversation before, was that your story is a parallel, but almost the yin-yang of some of the couples that we know that are down in North Carolina, like Inez and Stephen Rubistello, who basically got their career started here in Manhattan. They worked at Windows of the World and World Trade Center, and now are in Tarboro, in a small, sleepy little town, having On the Square and Tarboro Brewing Company, and even their tacos and tap room in Rocky Mount, and they have their own little empire that they're building out there in a very quaint, subtle way. And then, of course, Vivian Howard and Ben Knight having really met out here, and Ben's from Chicago, I believe, and Vivian came out here to kind of further her culinary career, and then her parents essentially pulled them back to the small town of Kinston to open up the Chef and the Farmer, and you know, now she's big time Hollywood, so that's cool.
Maybe in big time Howard.
That's right. And, but your story is, you know, it's charming and subtle, and I like the nuance of your story. But here you are from, you know, going from North Carolina and now up in the big city, but you brought this sense of family and I don't know, like a heartwarming, like, you know, very intimate atmosphere to a big city. You bring this, you kind of brought small to big.
Well, right, and it not necessarily was it our plan, it's just what we do, but it's also, we figured out over time that it's what, when we would go to France, we would try to eat at a big fancy 3-star Michelin restaurant, and then most of our time was either spent with me cooking food or eating in smaller restaurants, most of which were in the countryside and usually mom and pop operations. Even with that said, some of the Michelin restaurants that we ate at were mom and pop operations as well. So, and before that, one of our most memorable meals was eating at Lutece here in New York.
Yeah.
So all these things have kind of festered in us, and when we do things, that comes out of us without even thinking about it, right? Because those meals that we had in France in the countryside were the most memorable. You know, we would walk away. I can remember, and Tina can remember, the smaller meals that we had much more vividly than we can eating at the big fancy restaurants. And so that romantic vibe, feel, notion kind of emanates out of us, just out of osmosis, I guess, if you will. And so this is what we were doing at the beach, romantically.
What was the name of the restaurant in Kitty Hawk?
Carolina Blue. Not a Tar Heel
Go
thing.
Heels.
Yeah.
It's not a Tar Heel thing, though no offense, people. It's the color of the chef's eyes.
Oh,
Romance is alive and well here.
And so it started there because when we started traveling to France, we would come back at Carolina Blue and these things would start happening organically. And then when we got to Chapel Hill, that was just what it was like to the next level. And when we came to New York, did you already tell them that
No,
it's an act
a
of
little bit.
desperation?
Yeah, to get a job, we couldn't get arrested.
Yeah, we
couldn't
came
get
back to your
arrested.
job. This was if you had asked
Spent
us,
all of our savings.
right? If you'd asked us if
January
this
of
was
13,
possible
no money left.
when we left Chapel Hill,
Yeah.
we would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Or you might have gotten kicked in the chin. Because this was so far out of our mindset that it was just laughable.
Yeah.
And so, like she said, we floundered around here for
4 months, 5 months,
Yeah.
5 months, and then it was January of 2013, and we were sitting in a sublet apartment, and I said to Chip, I said, you know, we're gonna have to just get a headhunter and just go anywhere in the United States that'll have us. I said, because we're not having any success here, even with connections, even with people that knew us, trying to help. And it's funny, Chip had a little bit of press at Chapel Hill. He was written up in Bon Appetit as one of the top 10 chefs, still at his stove every night. He was pre-nominated for the James, you know, the long list of nominees.
Yeah.
And I mean, we didn't seek any of that press, but we didn't come up with nothing. But we were, you know, in New York, you come up, you're nothing. You know, you really are. And even though I used to live here, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Our lineage didn't matter. And so, you know, we were sitting in the apartment, and I said, you know, we can put the word out. We can go anywhere. We don't have kids. We don't own a house. We don't have any roots. Go someplace we like to live. Get a job. It doesn't matter. As long as we like living there, it'll be fine.
Right.
And that was, and then like not even a couple of days later, Neil Rosenthal of Rosenthal
I was
Wine.
this close to taking a job in Nevis.
Yeah.
Nevis.
Nevis.
Spain?
No.
Nevis.
It's in
It's
the Caribbean.
the south of Mexico, Caribbean.
Huh.
But all the meat is frozen.
Yeah.
All the wine is domestic.
I mean, I basically taking the job.
Oh wow.
No, he woke up with like heart palpitations and bags under his eyes, and he was like, I can't do it. I can't go there yet. And it's a beautiful place, but it's not like, it's more of a place you go 10 years from now to be a chef. And
right.
Enjoy the lifestyle. And
no offense to those.
but Neil Rosenthal, you know, we were a big proponent of his wine list in Chapel Hill. It came down through Jim Stock at Hall River. And we loved his wines. And then we did a James Beard House dinner, and we used all of Rosenthal's wines. And we did a wine dinner at Bonne Soiree when Neil released his book. And I begged and I pleaded and I begged and I pleaded to get him for a wine dinner. And everyone said he won't do it. And we got so lucky, and he did. He did a wine dinner with us at Bonne Soiree. And it was fabulous, and it was fabulous meeting him, and it was just like this whole thing. But we didn't really know him personally, so to speak. And out of the blue, he emails me and says, what are you and Chip doing? And I said, basically nothing. Basically, we got to have part-time jobs. They're getting ready to end. We're out of money. We're going to have to do something. And he says, well, I have this guy who's contacted me. He's the son of old clients of mine who both passed away. And he thinks he wants to open a restaurant in New York, but he doesn't have a team. And I was like, well, sure, well, thank you. We'll meet him. I said, but, you know, my first advice would be don't use us. Because why would I suggest to someone to open up a restaurant using your money with people that no one's heard of, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so Robert Margulis, who we had, ironically, a long story, too much for this podcast, we had met his parents before at Bonne Soiree.
Huh.
Upper East Side connection.
Yeah.
So strange with Mayor Koch. It's unbelievably how the world works. And so we meet him at the Roosevelt Wine Merchant Store. Will Holborn was kind enough to let us sit at the big long wood table and have a conversation. And so we had a conversation. We told him what we were about. We told him what we did. And we get ready to leave, and we stand up and like, thank you very much. He goes, oh, I'll walk with you a little bit down Lexington. So we're walking, and it's winter, and we're talking. And he's a nice guy, super nice guy. Right? And we leave, and we shake his hand. I said to Chip, I said, well, there goes that, you know. Like, you know, whatever. I said, you know, that he's so nice, but surely, no.
Guess we're going to Mexico.
Get home, get an email from him in all caps, talking about how excited he was to meet us and how we were so dynamic and how he loved our story and loved to hear us talk about food and wine and service. And I'm going to France to our family's house. We have a family house in France. With my brother, we have to go check on things. When I get back, I'll reach out. And then I said to Chip.
Yeah. Last time we'll hear from him.
Yeah. Came back, emailed me, let's get together. I put together financials. I put together our idea. We started looking at spots. And the whole time I'm thinking, this is just not, come on.
Yeah.
Right? So we stretch it out, and it becomes, you know, end of March, April, May. And he and I are walking up and down blocks, literally walking up and down areas. We actually went downtown. We went to the Upper West Side. We went to the Spanish Harlem. We looked at locations everywhere. And the whole time I'm thinking, you know, this isn't going to be come to fruition. I mean, this is just like me having fun with this guy. And come on. And then we were walking up this block, and he's pointing out, because he grew up here in the Upper East Side, lives here now, had moved away, has moved back. And he's pointing out places, and he pointed out like Le Refuge used to be across the street, the French restaurant that was here for years. Now it's Tolowachi. And so he's pointing out restaurants, and we get to here, we're across the street, and he points across the street. He goes, oh, that's an Italian restaurant. It's been here for 24 years, and I never went there, but, you know, it's been here a long time. That's a neighborhood spot. And I look over at it, and the awning is yellow and old and ripped and dirty, and pieces of the awning are hanging. And the front, the plants are dead. And I said, he's done. And Robert was like, what are you talking about? I said, he's finished. He's done. He might not
know it
be
himself.
right. He might not, have listed, or he might not renew his lease. But I'm going to tell you that, you know, this is a guy who's probably 24 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So we come across the street. We walk in. They're getting set up for dinner. It's a Sunday. And I said, we introduced ourselves, and I said, if you ever think about, you know, not renewing your lease, would you mind calling us and giving us first dibs to talk to the landlord? And this guy looks at me, and he said, it lists tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with a broker.
Wow.
And I went, can we meet with you first? Can we meet with you? Because I've already listed it with the broker. I said, well, can we talk to what's your price? What do you need?
Yeah.
We come, we meet him, we go over to coffee, we nail out the deal on the corner, we walk back,
Done.
How crazy.
Yeah.
That's classic.
But you had like the intuition to see the
could tell.
tells.
Yeah.
There were
There were
tells.
tells.
Yeah.
Anybody
I'm not
could
playing
tell.
poker with you.
No. So, he gives us the date he wants to be done. We start hammering out a lease, and the owners live in L.A. of the building. They're not even local.
Those out Los Angelinos.
Yeah,
Seriously.
so we start hammering out the lease, and we still just can't believe it. Like Chip and I are like, can't believe it. Robert goes to Madeira every summer with his wife who's from there, and so they went away on vacation. We start the arduous detail of trying to do most of the work ourselves to save money, and it was, needed a lot of work. Of course, it was an old building. We missed our deadline because money, of course, there were more things that needed repair than we thought, so money that we thought that we could use to do other things wasn't available, because we promised Robert that we would try to keep it in this money that and I said, I'm going to try to keep it at this, and that's my goal to you, and then I'm going to try to not ask you for any more money once we open, and that's what my goal's going to be to you.
Yeah.
So we finally get open November like the 8th. So we missed season. We missed people paying attention to us. It was one of the worst winters, not cold, but it was a lot of snow. So there was no walk-by traffic. So we open up. We're doing
November 2012?
2013.
2013.
So we open up.
remember that.
We've got 8 customers, 11 customers, 22 customers. We're plodding along. We're plodding along. I did 7 people my first New Year's Eve. 7. We're plodding along. We're biting our nails. We're having a heart attack because I'm like, oh my God, if it doesn't work, what are we going to do? We're going to have to think of something else because, we got this guy that's depending on us to come up with this concept. And maybe what we do, people don't want. Maybe that's okay. It's all right. So we get to March and weather's getting better. The word had gotten out. I always said, I knew I'd made it if someone's talking about me at the beauty parlor, at the beauty salon. So a woman comes in, very beautiful, woman in her Chanel suit. And she was like, I was at the salon today. And my friend, Ellen Lieber, said, you haven't been to the Simone? And I was like, oh, I just thought that was everything. So she makes a reservation, and Ellen Lieber was one of our first guests to come in, the Liebers. And we start getting this regular people walking over from Park Avenue and coming to dinner, and we started to get a little heat. That's all well and good, but we knew summer was coming, and I knew enough from living in New York what happens to the Upper East Side. So just when we kind of got our footing, and we kind of caught up from the winter money, here comes looming at me June and July and August, and I'm going, oh my God, we're never going to make it. We're never going to make it. It's going to be terrible. I'm upstairs. Chip calls me. It's a Monday. And he said, why is the New York Times blowing our phone up? And I was like, I don't know. Pick up the phone. Chip picks up the phone, and he calls me back, and he goes, why are they sending a photographer over from the New York Times? And I was like, maybe they're doing an article on the Upper East Side. Michael White was opening up another Marini.
Yeah.
Some little energy was happening. I said, maybe they're doing like a focus on the Upper East Side, and we're just part of it. So I call the New York Times, and I say, hi, I'm just curious, why are you sending a photographer? And the woman says to me, are you serious? Not very happy that I'm calling. I said, oh, is that rude of me to call and ask? I'm not allowed to ask. I said, I'm sorry. I'm just curious. You're part of an article. Are you doing a focus? And she was like, no, it's for the review. And I went, what review? She said, your review. I said, when is that? She said, next Wednesday. And I was like, by who? She said, Pete Wells. And I went, oh, no. I come running down the stairs. I said to Chip, oh my God, oh no, he's been here. We didn't see him. I never saw him once.
Yeah.
I never saw him. We never saw this man come and go.
The
Good
best
job by
scripts.
him, yeah.
The ones you don't see.
Oh my goodness, terrified.
Worst week ever.
Worst week ever. We were so worried. We criticized everything we did.
Yeah, because you don't know what the reviews
Well,
are.
no.
It's a roller coaster. Every 5 seconds, you're changing your attitude about what it's
Oh no, and we were still,
it's gonna suck.
it's the last week of May, it's Memorial Day weekend.
You can
We're
make
still,
or break your business.
It make or break our business.
Yeah.
And we were still slow, we were doing 11, doing 13. It was Memorial Day week.
Yeah.
And then all of these people from different departments of the New York Times
This is the funniest thing.
called all week long. One was fine, but 4 or 5 was more than a coincidence, right? We were like, oh heavens, all these people are coming to dinner. Chip says, well, maybe they're coming to see what the worst restaurant is in New York.
Yeah, that's usually how it works.
Yeah. So they come, and like 2 were here at the same time, and they both said, "Can we meet the chef?" And I was like, "Sure." And I took them back to the kitchen. And so we're getting through the weekend, and we're literally like, you know. And then he calls for a fact check, Mr. Wells.
Yeah.
You know, and you could tell, like I could tell from his phone conversation with me that he didn't think I was for real in a way, the way I talked about what we do and who we are. And I could tell that he's wondering, am I just a completely made up character in some story? And he was so nice. He was so nice on the phone, and you could tell he was just going, huh. Yeah, like going, Any other questions?
Yeah.
So, a good friend of ours, Christopher Russell, who I don't know if you know from Union Square Hospitality Group. He was the GM at Union Square, and he's a big person here in the food world. He had actually found us on the Outer Banks in Kitty Hawk years ago and has followed our career. And he knew he's living here, and he calls me. He goes, "Hey, we want to come to dinner Tuesday night." Me and Ryan Looper and my wife and his wife Stacy, and we want to come to dinner. And I was like, "Why?" He said, "Well, because we just want to be there." And I, being so analog, did not know that the New York Times review came out the day before online. I did not know this.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Well, sure, you can come to dinner. That'll be fun. You know, the night before the review, you can keep me calm. You can keep me from being so scared." So I'm sitting here by myself. It's like 1:30 in the afternoon, and had the lights kind of off, and I'm answering the phone.
It's on Tuesday.
And we were a little bit worried. We had a bit of a financial issue in regards to rent, but we weren't like 2 months late. We were like a month and a day. And the phone rang, and it was the landlord on speakerphone, making not very polite remarks about he didn't know he was my business partner, and he didn't know that he was, and not very nice. And I said, "Well, you know, we're getting ready to get it written up in the Times, and maybe we'll get some guests from that, and I'll get you caught up in no time." And he said, "That's not good enough." And he was like, not very nice. And I was already like, you know, so I get off the phone. I'm by myself. I'm like sitting in the dining room crying over my reservation book by myself. I don't go back and talk to Chip because I don't want him to be stressed because he's cooking. And then the phone rings again. It's Will Helburn from the Rosenthal Wine Merchant, and he was like, "How you doing, kid?" I said, "I'm good." "How are you, Will?" He's like, "I'm good. Are you really good?" I said, "I am. Why?" He goes, "You don't know?" And I was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh no. Is it bad? What? Why are you calling me?" He said, "The review's out." I was like, "No, it's not Wednesday." He goes, "No, honey. It's online. Get a grip. Become modern. Go downstairs and get on your computer. Honey, you got 3 stars from the New York Times."
Man.
Yeah.
I didn't even go tell you yet. I went downstairs.
Yeah.
I read it. I come upstairs. I'm like, "Oh my God. Oh my God."
It was insane.
Chip starts crying. We're crying. Cars are pulling up with drivers
Phone
and
started ringing. It's
secretaries.
the craziest thing we've ever seen.
The phone, 300, 400 calls a day.
Jeez.
Wow.
People
And I-
warned us about this. They said even if it's a mediocre review, you're going to get inundated with phone calls.
Right.
Right.
And we're like,
Oh, no.
that's great.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
You know,
Oh, no.
we got a really good review in North Carolina, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got you.
Yeah.
And I made 2 phone calls. I had
It
Pete
did not
Wells.
stop for months.
I had Pete Wells' cell phone number because he called me when he did his fact check. And I shouldn't have probably. It's probably very inappropriate, and I apologize. But I called his cell phone, and I left a message. And I said, "You'll never know what you did." And we thank you.
Yeah.
And then I called the reviewer from Raleigh.
Greg Cox.
Greg Cox.
Yeah.
And he never called me back, but I called him. And I said, "You saw it first.
Yeah.
And you gave us a lovely review." And I appreciate that too.
When Greg reviewed one of our restaurants, I did ask him on the phone. I was at Standard Foods, and I said, "Greg, I know you can't tell me much, but thumbs up or thumbs down?" And he said, he's like, "Thumbs up, man. Thumbs up."
Oh, yeah.
It's
terrible though, that not knowing.
Oh,
that-
oh my God.
So that's,
We just couldn't believe it.
the aforementioned Andrea
I love
Weigel.
seeing the tears in your eyes right now. This is you can't see it, you can hear it.
Yeah,
Thinking about it.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story. I mean, literally life changing. But that week, must have
Life-changing.
been- Yeah.
Yeah.
Andrea Wiley told us that some reviewers, and Greg Cox, like Max said, will do. If the review is good or bad, they will give the restaurant a heads up, like in terms of staffing. right? Because
Oh,
if
how
it's bad,
nice.
yeah, because if it's bad, then it's like you might want to let your staff know that like, maybe
Yeah.
it's time
Yeah.
to look for another job.
With his bear.
Yeah, Greg said that to us on the phone. He was just because after I asked him, thumbs up, thumbs down. He's a very personable guy. In fact, Greg, we're trying to get you on the podcast. We'll keep your anonymity, but we'd love to hear your review.
Yes, and I can tell you, I read Greg Cox's review in the convenience store on Route 15501, heading out to where we lived in Mebane.
Right.
And there's a First shopping center with a gas station that is you hit after you come off the little stretch of highway before you hit Carborough. And I pulled in there to buy the paper that morning when Greg Cox reviewed us, and I sat there and cried like a baby.
For Bonne Soiree.
For Bonne Soiree.
Right.
Yeah, I sure did.
Well, he just mentioned us. He's like, so just make sure you have parking available. Make sure that the staff isn't parked in your parking lot. You're going to need that accessible. Make sure that you're fully stocked of all your inventory, things like that. You want to have your best foot forward once this comes out. And it's like, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate.
Yeah.
That's
that
true.
you
Because
care.
that can hurt you
Yeah.
just as bad.
Right.
And it has happened.
To be honest, it could hurt Greg Cox himself if
Right.
you fail after he
Right.
endorses you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right?
He's playing
He's kind of
defense,
worried about himself
Right.
a little bit. Like, hey,
And I will say
don't be
that
a jerk for me.
And I will say that's what Mr. Rosenthal said to me once, because he doesn't do this. He doesn't put people together for business. This was like a real gift from Mr. Rosenthal, from Neil. For Neil to think enough of Chip and I, to want to put us in the path of someone that could put us here. For Neil to do that for us, was enough of like an amazing thing to happen. But Neil said to me, don't mess this up.
Like I'm sticking my neck out.
Like,
don't mess it
you
up.
just bring what you got. Just bring what you got and do it. Just focus, and you just bring what you got, because they're not going to know what to do with you when you open.
Yeah.
They're not going to know, especially for the front. We've realized that people have forgotten how to be cared for, how to really let us care for you. Let us, this is not in and out and a tasting menu and seamless and beautiful and elegant. Yes, that's all true with all the big restaurants. This is, I am going to know where you like to sit. I'm going to remember to ask how your daughter is doing at her new job. I'm going to remember to ask how your vacation was. And it's personal.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, like anywhere in the world. You think New York City is a cold town? It is not. Everyone loves to be cared for.
Yes.
Everyone loves it.
Yeah.
They do. They love it.
Yeah, and it's why we go out to dinner. Because
I think
it's
so.
like this is the ultimate, and it's true. I think about it every time. Like when you go here, it is like being at home, but it's better because you're taken care of. You don't have to take care of
And you don't have to do
anybody.
the dishes.
And you don't have to do the dishes. And what I love about here is, I don't even have to think much about. I don't have to think
Yeah.
about the wine because I know what you're going to bring me is going to be delicious, and I know the food's going to match seamlessly
Yeah.
with the food.
And we're really lucky. Everyone likes the care. Everyone is just your neighbor.
Yeah.
Like when the review came out, we'd only been open a few months, and I would take a break every day because the phone insanity. So I'd have to take 20 minutes and get a walk in. I'd walk to the river. I'd walk up Park Avenue. I would just get out and get fresh air to get away from the telephone and the
Kicking
people
your
walking
legs
in.
as a true rock
That's right. And the amazing thing was we didn't even really know a lot of people by name yet. We knew faces. But I'm taking a walk up Park Avenue or over to the river, and people are passing me in New York going, Tina, we saw that review, man. Congratulations.
That's
and I'm
awesome.
like, thanks. Yeah, thank you. But you're like, it's just a small town like anywhere. I swear
Yeah.
it is. Just a small
Surreal.
town. And every year I send my little snail mail note to the Times to Pete Wells thanking him in my handwriting. Every year. I hope it gets to his box. I hope you get
Do
it.
you think he can read cursive?
I think so.
But I think we need to shut it down because
Yeah.
we literally could go all day talking
Yeah.
with you. Because
Well,
it's
I would say
amazing.
that you all represent why it can go all day as well. What we do is because we love what we do, and we love the food. Every aspect about food, whether it's pizza or Chinese food or haute cuisine or hot dogs or barbecue. Let's not even get into the discussion of Carolina barbecue, where it comes from and what's the best. Can't even get into that discussion. Don't see? I know Eastern.
let's.
I know. So, but the reason that this could go on and on, this conversation, is because of you three. That's why.
Thank you.
That's why it can go on and on.
Well, I appreciate it, Matt.
I mean, I like to end the show and usually put a button on things, but I don't think I need to say anything. So I'm just going to say, please do yourself a favor. Come up to New York City, come see Chip and Tina at the Simone, and you will eat and drink ethereally, merrily.
Guests of the NCF&B podcast receive a swag bag, including gifts from these exceptional North Carolina producers. Social House Vodka, Hungry Harvest, Alley 26 Tonic Syrup, Michael's English Muffins, Larry's Beans and 42 in Lawrence, Ramona Wine Coolers, and Happy Hour Vitamins. Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am the voice, Brian Hoyle. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.